The Atlantean elites came to the king and asked him, "Let us use your sacred technology to control the minds of the masses. It's for their own good," they said. He didn't go along with them. Not only did he not go along with them, he became incredibly furious with them. This started a war that ended up in his assassination, and those same people who wanted to steal the king of Atlantis's spiritual technology to control people's minds, the descendants of those people are running this world today, and they are very close to achieving their 13,000-year goal of using this once spiritual technology to completely control the minds of all humans and turn them into a slave race. So, we are now on the second video. Yesterday I made a video, The Forbidden History of Earth, and we talked about all that from the very beginning. Now we're getting into the meat of things, and we're going to be talking about the King of Atlantis, who he really was, how he lost his power, and how the whole world fell. This is coming directly from my interactions with extraterrestrials over the past 2.5 years. In June of 2022, I did human-initiated contact, also known as CE5 protocols. Go look it up. Any of you can do it. Who knows what you'll find out. And after doing that, extraterrestrials connected me to other higher dimensional beings, and what has been going on for the past 2.5 years is more bizarre than anything I could have possibly imagined. But among all of the many things that I have been shown and told, one is the history of Earth that has been hidden from you, that we have forgotten. And more importantly, when you understand the truth of this history, you'll understand the truth of who you are. And when this happens, nothing can contain you. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you want to watch the first one, I'll put a link in the description where I go through all of these things here. Now we'll get into part 2. So we talked about this last time. An energetic earth shift unbalances the Atlantis king. So what was happening is that the earth knew that she was rotating away from the galactic center. So, in case you don't know, it turns out that the Vedics are right, that Earth goes through this 26,000-year cycle through our own galaxy, and at the height of spiritual awareness, we are the closest to the center, and then what people call Kali Yuga, which is the age of darkness, where we are only 25% connected to our true awakened mind. We are on the opposite side. We are far from the galactic center. So the earth was beginning to shift, and she felt it. Now, the king here, this Titan king, this is, of course, a stylized rendering of what I saw. But what he would do is he would sit in his crystal throne in front of, or sometimes on top of, pyramids, and he would get these direct energy connections to very high energy fields. And in fact, what would happen is the energy would get so intense that if you were looking at him, his head would disappear. And the only thing that you would see is just this huge column of light coming into his body. And so he had, with the help of extraterrestrials, higher dimensional beings, he created a series of spiritual technologies that use frequency and sound and intention. And he was able to create a safe aura around the earth that shifted up the frequency so that people could access their 5D senses. It was like the beginning of 5D. It was like 5D, you know, point one. It was the first creation of that. Now, this was part of an experiment that was going on in the entire multiverse. All of the gods, all of the councils, and every being that incarnated there was part of this experiment. And this king, he was originally one of the designers of the Earth experiment, where beings could come and become more and more powerful, and the intensity of Earth would actually allow them to increase the power of their souls. And unfortunately, because he was also human, he became a little imbalanced. So in this part of the list here, an energetic Earth shift unbalances the Atlantis king. So the Earth was originally his daughter in higher dimensions, and she incarnated as the queen, the Earth queen, the planet Earth. And he, because he was human, he wasn't quite remembering all of this. So he had become very obsessed with what he was doing, and he was going a little off kilter, and she jolted him, trying to get his attention. Because he was still partly human, he misunderstood, and it unbalanced him. It made him even more obsessed with this technology. And even though people started, like higher dimensional beings, extraterrestrials, other council members, tried to start talking him down from this, he became more attached to this idea. So this is what happened here. I talked about that in the previous video. Go watch that. Towards the end, you'll see it. The king of Atlantis becomes obsessed with technology. I talked about that already. I've hinted at it here. And he became overly attached to the idea that his job was to shift everybody up to where he was at. And he had forgotten that this experiment, and there's an Earth experiment and there was the Atlantis experiment, that in the experiment he was the one chosen to bridge that gap. And he was such an egalitarian that he thought everybody should be at his level. And people would say, they're not supposed to be at your level. This is your job. They have their jobs, and they have their experiences and their experiments. And he couldn't tolerate that thought of people not experiencing what he was experiencing. So he worked with extraterrestrials, with light beings, to create more of this technology, which the majority of it was these megalithic structures, like the pyramids, like Stonehenge, like found all over the world, Göbekli Tepe. Many of those are recreations. After the flood, survivors went and tried to recreate it, and that's what you're seeing. But these technologies were so powerful that priests used to go, who were trained by the king and trained by ETs and others. They knew how to intone sounds and use intention and use mantra and all kinds of other things, sacred movement. And these megalithic structures would begin to vibrate. In fact, they're still around today. You can still find everyone you go to. If you just start experimenting with sound, you'll hear the sound reverberating and vibrating in the stones. So this was one of the technologies that were being used. So the king becomes obsessed with this. Now the ETs, the gods, the Lemurians seek to counsel the king because they could hear the earth. He couldn't. He was too wrapped up in his own attachment with his own obsessions. And he couldn't let go of it. They could hear the earth, and they knew, of course, what was happening. And so they were coming to him. You got to start powering down. We got to start moving towards a new age. And he said, no, there's no, I can hold them through it. I can keep them at a higher pace. Don't worry, I've got it under control. And of course he didn't. And the king alienates and banishes the light beings. So one by one, they came to him and tried to talk him out of what he was doing. And because he had become unbalanced from his own obsessions, as well as he misunderstood the jolt he received from the earth, it frightened him. As we talked about, he had a vision where he saw all of the human beings getting trapped underneath, rocks and mountains, and he thought that meant that they were going to lose their connection. What was really happening was the earth was trying to say to him, hey, they're going to shift down. You have to let them do that. And he got very upset. And so he just went off the reservation. And so he started banishing anybody that started trying to talk him out of using this spiritual technology. And so one by one, the Pleiadians, he kicked them out. He stopped listening to them. The Andromedans, because he actually was an Andromedan starseed, they came to him and he kicked them out very violently at one point, kicked them out and said, get off of Earth, get out of here. And the Lemurians, who are fellow Earth beings, who were also working with him and part of the 5D beautiful part of what he had created, they came to him and he kicked them out. So he banishes everybody from Atlantis and from Earth if he can. And now he's all by himself. And this is when things start to get really bad. So the Earth shifts out of the galactic center and humans begin to devolve. So this was going to happen. This is what everybody was talking about. So he was still using the pyramids. By the way, he created the pyramids for this reason. And I should have the picture here, but you can go and look on my channel. I have an interview with a guy who's digging things up in Mexico. Tons of things, hundreds, thousands of artifacts are coming out of the ground that, according to him, are scientifically proven to be 20,000 years old. And one of them is a plate that shows the pyramids shooting energy up into the sky. And this comes from Mexico. It didn't come out of the ground in Egypt. It came out of the ground in Mexico. So the whole world knew about this. And so this was his baby. He worked with other ETs to create it. And he was supposed to shut it down. And he didn't. In fact, if you go into the pyramids today, you will find what looks like explosions. Weird things on the inside, like there's been some kind of explosions inside of it. So everything really, really fell apart around this time. So the Earth shifts out of the galactic center. Now humans begin their spiritual de-evolution. And that's because the frequency starts to shift. Now, the king has this artificially raised vibration, but people's minds are starting to devolve, which means they're starting to become more 3D, more attached, more fearful, more selfish, more predatory. Now, the king's job was to bring them up to this heightened place and then begin to slowly back down the energy and teach them how to meditate, how to connect, how to go deep within, stay connected to the earth. And he didn't do that. And because he didn't do that, the people and the people around him became more and more attached to his idea of technology and artificially creating the earth. And because they started losing it, they started thinking in very destructive ways. And they eventually came up with this idea that, hey, we can control people and it'll be for their own good. And that's what's going on right now. What do you think AI is? What do you think all the tech billionaires are doing right now? They are fulfilling this. This is, if they're not consciously knowing what they're doing, they're unconsciously fulfilling. I can tell you, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, these guys, I'm just guessing here. I'm guessing that they are reincarnations of the Atlanteans who fell using this technology, or trying to use it. So they're trying to recreate it. The core Dark Force elites based on what ETs have told me, they know this. They know exactly what's going on, and their intentions are to use their black magic and to use their technology and other things in order to fulfill that early vision of controlling the whole world. So this was going on 13,000 years ago, and humans devolve. The Lemurians beg the king to relent, and of course they are banished. I already talked about that. The Atlantean elites become corrupted by spiritual technology. Already talked about that. The Atlantean elites approach the king with the new plan for Earth. So this new plan is, let's control them. We can. That's what they need. They need their little children, and we need to control them. We can control their minds. We can control everything. And of course, the king, that was the opposite of what he wanted. He wanted an egalitarian world where everybody was free and everybody was sovereign. And this was the exact opposite. And he started to realize that, things were really starting to go out of control, and he started losing it. And so he got in a fight with the elites. He disagreed with them vehemently. He was a very passionate person, and when he lost his temper, it was, you better get the hell out of the room. Light bulbs start exploding. And so he became a problem for them. He was their inspiration, but now he was their problem. So the Atlantean elites rebel against the king. They start a war against the extraterrestrials. They know, because the king told them, that the ETs were talking him out of using the technology. He had been complaining and bitching about this, and his inner circle knew about it. And they had watched him banish all of the ETs and the Lemurians and everybody else because they weren't going along with what he wanted to do. And so they were already, because of what the king did, it was his doing. They were influenced by it. They were now taking his, what they perceived as, what they interpreted wrongly where he was going, and they took it to its logical conclusion, and then they decided, we got to get rid of this guy. He's in our way. So that started a war, started off as a rebellion. First it was just fighting, and then a rebellion, and then a split, and then a war. And got pretty bad. Okay, so the Atlantean elites stage a coup against the king, and they kill him. And he had people around him who he trusted. He thought he could trust them, but they had been corrupted by the other elites. And you're seeing this play out now. Look at the people that are getting thrown under the bus, having to do with the Epstein files. Trump, Elon Musk, even people like Peter Attia, Bill Gates, Prince, whatever his name is, Fergie. These are very high-ranking people, and they are deliberately getting thrown under the bus. The Epstein list stuff that has come out that points to them and makes them look bad was done on purpose. So that's what these people are like. That you can trust them as long as you're doing what they want, but the moment you start not going in their direction, they will turn on you. So they did this. They turned on the king, and his closest advisors turned on him. They Charlie Kirked him. And anyway. So the Atlantean elites cannot find the king's spiritual technology. So the whole reason they got rid of him is they thought once they get rid of him, they're going to find the plans and the technology, and then they find out that he's hidden it. And I believe it is hidden underneath the left paw of the Sphinx. Now, we'll find out. I'm very interested to see that. I'm actually blown away because I started having these revelations before we started hearing about the massive technology underneath the pyramids that go like a mile or something like that under the surface. Those huge structures. So it amazed me because I was coming out and saying, here's what I'm seeing, that the pyramids were actually technology that used the power of the earth to shoot energy up into the atmosphere and create this shield. And then, months later, some guy uses a something up in, a satellite floating around, and he takes scans and finds these huge structures underneath the pyramids. I'm like, this is crazy. This stuff these ETs, I believe, are telling me, it's turning out to be true. So I think it's possible that underneath the Sphinx's left paw is this technology. And it still hasn't been uncovered yet, as far as I know. So the elites then begin to research to control human minds. They've been doing it for 13,000 years. And they're getting closer to their, what's happened, especially in the last decade. They're getting close. And their plan, as you know, is horrible. And it means reducing the population to a manageable workforce and then using technology to control their minds. And I could list all the stuff that they're doing, to make this happen, so that they can control their slave population to do all the work for them. I could go on, but I want to keep my channel, so I won't. So Atlantean elites create weapons of mass destruction and use mind control technology. So the king never created weapons of mass destruction. His mind was never on warfare. So this was just an abomination of all of the things that he had worked towards. And so this is the thing about high powerful technology, is that it can be used as a weapon. And anything can be, used as a weapon, if somebody's got the wrong mindset about it. And the problem that the king didn't understand, which he understands today, but what the king did not understand back then, was that it wasn't about external technology. It was about the heart and the mind. And so the idea was that this energy would be used, and then he would guide people to do that, use their heart and their mind and their intention, so that when they came around now, because now we're shifting back up towards the golden age, that people would then know, the world would know how to use this power to achieve these goals. So unfortunately, this was the Atlantean experiment. We're going to talk about what the Atlantean experiment was and how it was temporarily put on hold. Okay, so the Atlantean elites create weapons of mass destruction and use mind control technology. Higher dimensional councils meet to discuss Earth. So, again, we've been taught something that is completely inaccurate. I've come to find this out. I felt this way too. We've been programmed to believe, that everything happens for a reason, that everything is planned out, that God has a plan, God knows exactly what he's doing. And the truth of the matter is that's not how the multiverse works at all. And what has happened is that the beings in the multiverse are constantly experimenting with spirituality and energy to create new universes, create new things. The universe is obsessed with creating new things. And so they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen from A to Z. And as I talked about in the first video, which you can go and click on, this Earth was an experiment. And it was an experiment, this time going into a very harsh, dense environment where the soul would really have to work to remember itself. And this was, again, the risk. And there was this whole debate about, this is this too risky? And everybody decided to go with the risky choice. And I think we're all going to be grateful that that happened. But there's a risk, and people don't know. So the Atlantean experiment was also risky. And so, to have this demigod king, and again, this is something that is written about. Plato writes about it. That the Atlanteans were demigods, and that gods walked among them, and it's because they, Atlantis. By the way, in case you want to know where Atlantis was, it wasn't in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean was named after Atlas, the first king of Atlantis, and also it's been mistranslated. People have somebody mistranslated the original Greek writing of Plato and said that Atlantis was out past the Pillars of Hercules or Pillars of Heracles, and that turns out that that's not true. That wasn't in there. That was added in. So because they didn't understand, they threw that out there. But Atlantis was what's now called the Richat structure, Richat. Go look it up. It is identical to Plato's description and his measurements. Identical. And you can see that it was there, and it's been wiped off the map. And all of Africa, that part of Africa used to be beautiful, lush forest. Explains why I like lush forests. It was a beautiful, lush forest, but it wasn't out in the middle of the ocean. So anyway, you can go look that up if you want. I got off track here. Higher dimensional councils meet to discuss Earth. All right, so this was an experiment, and it got pushed, and it went off track. Now, as it turns out, in higher dimensions, very high dimensions, the higher beings actually wanted this to happen so that humans and souls could become very powerful. But again, if you tell people the end of the movie, as you walk in, then it's no fun. So people didn't know. So the councils get together, right? Higher dimensional councils. They exist. I've met them and spoken with them. And they get together and they are like, okay, we got to do something. This Atlantean experiment, this experiment within the Earth experiment, it's gone off the deep end now. And these Atlantean rebels are very dangerous, and they could not only cause damage to Earth and to humans, but they can now start causing damage to other extraterrestrial races. And we can't let this happen. If they continue with their technological, if they continue to increase their technological knowledge and with their corrupt minds, this can be bad. So they decided they had to end it. And so very sadly, they came to the conclusion that they were going to have to wipe out the worldwide high technology civilization. So they sent the comets that hit the ice pack at the North Pole, which was at that time 2 miles thick in some places. So they get hit by these comets and the ice gets vaporized. So it melts and gets vaporized instantly. That's why, according to Plato, everything was destroyed in a day, because that's all it would take. You just vaporize 2 miles of ice over that huge part of the world, and it just, and it completely destroyed Atlantis. Wiped it, literally wiped it off the face of the map. You just see the skeleton of it left. And so that's what they did. They decided to end the Atlantis experiment. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's where we're at now. There's more to come. I'll make another video. There's 2 more. I'll tell you the third part where the councils, I'll bring us up to speed here to modern times, and then we're going to talk about where Earth is going to go that hasn't gone yet, based on what I believe I've been shown and told. So, again, don't take my word for any of this. And I'm totally prepared to be wrong about all of it. I'm not attached to this. I'm merely sharing with you what I believe I've been shown and what I've been told. None of this is stuff that I enjoyed hearing, because I was one of those people that was involved in this. And the first thing that they said to me, when they came to me 2.5 years ago, is they said, we have some things to show you and you're not going to like it. And they said, you had a part in helping to create the evil cabal that's running the world now. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they said, and so over 2.5 years, they've taken me back in time and shown me my part in what I did. And so I'm not telling you this because it sounds cool to me. I'm none of this. If it were up to me, I would make none of this true. It was so depressing for me when I saw what I did that there was a couple days I almost, I almost ended it. So if you think I'm some YouTube kook who's getting off on pretending to know something about ETs and Atlantis, I'm not. I didn't believe in Atlantis. I didn't believe in ETs. I didn't believe in any of this. And none of this was anything I thought was real. None of it. So I'm just telling you what I saw. Don't take my word for it. Do human-initiated contact yourself. Very simple. Go on this channel, and if you want all of the specifics of how I do it, go to contact.thunderwizard.com. If you want absolute free information, just simply Google CE5 contact. CE5 protocols. Do the live guided interdimensional meditation. We do that twice a week, which is more advanced version of the meditation. My take on it. But I recommend that you talk to extraterrestrials yourself. Don't trust anybody. Don't take my word for it. I'm going to be wrong about stuff. I might be sincere, and I am. But I'm going to be wrong about things, and I'm going to change my mind about stuff. And most importantly, I don't know who you are and what your background was. You need to find that out. You need to find out who you are. None of us are going to get to the 5D world until we start understanding who we are outside of this third dimensional video game, which has come to an end. It's over. And so, like I said, don't take my word for it. Do it yourself. Do whatever you have to do to figure out how you can connect to higher dimensional beings, and be prepared to have your entire reality completely destroyed, have your mind completely destroyed. But I'd rather know the truth than be comfortable. And now that I know the truth, none of the stuff that's happening is, I knew this was coming. I mean, the stuff that's coming out now, we haven't even gotten to the truth, the real deep, nasty stuff yet. The stuff that's coming out doesn't surprise me at all, because ET's already told me what was coming and what had happened. So anyway, I'm babbling, so I'm going to stop talking. But anyway, if you want to, if you're new to the channel, go here to thunderwizard.com, click on memberships, and then scroll around for Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, and subscribe to that. Also, look around for all the other stuff in the memberships, in case you want to work with me personally, in case you want to have sessions where I will talk to ETs, right there with you, channel, if you will. I'll tell you what they're telling me about you, and get you connected with them You can go to channel.thunderwizard.com also if you want, full-on channel sessions. And go to maushan.thunderwizard.com and do the practices. These are practices. Some of them are things that have been channeled directly to me, that light beings are teaching human beings how to shift themselves up using these practices. If you have questions about any of it, put it in the comments. And if you have any memories about this, or if you believe me, if you don't believe me, just be respectful. I don't like disrespect, but say, put it in the comments. And if you have questions about stuff you want me to make videos, put that in the comments too. And I also have this here. I just got a really cool amethyst necklace, which I got at otterspirit.com. They gave it to me for free. And if you go to their website and put in Michael20 in the coupon, you'll get 20% off of any of their stuff. I made a video about why amethyst is good to be wearing right now, but anyway. All right, that's it. I love you all, my friends. Please be very good to yourselves. I will see you all very soon.